Hello, all you freedom-loving people. Pope Francis passed away, so who will be the next pope? Or will the mysterious prophecy come true? And have you heard about the SCOTUS ruling at midnight? We also discussed the latest in the trade war. Okay, let's get into it. A couple of major events took place over the Easter weekend. President Trump wished all Americans a happy Easter on Sunday. President Trump wrote on Truth Social, "Melania and I would like to wish everyone a very happy Easter. Whether you are heading out to church or watching service from home, may this day be full of peace and joy for all who celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. He is risen." And on Saturday, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced a unilateral 30-hour suspension of military action against Ukraine over Easter. Putin said at a meeting with his chief of the General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, "Guided by humanitarian considerations, today from 1800 hours to midnight from Sunday to Monday, the Russian side declares an Easter truce. I order that all military action be stopped for this period. We assume that the Ukrainian side will follow our example. At the same time, our troops must be ready to repel possible violations of the truce and provocations from the enemy, any of its aggressive actions." However, the Ukrainian side did not respond to this ceasefire initiative. Meanwhile, President Trump has called for a peace deal to be reached this week. Then, both sides can make a fortune in massive business partnerships with the booming United States. And on Monday morning, Pope Francis, the first Latin American pontiff, passed away at the age of 88. And today, the Vatican revealed that Pope Francis suffered a stroke, which led to a coma, then irreversible heart failure. In February, he began to suffer from a severe respiratory infection that developed into a double pneumonia. At the time, the 88-year-old Pope was deeply worried about his survival. He'd informed his aides that he won't survive and was preparing for his death. After a grueling battle against double pneumonia and a bout of kidney failure in the hospital for 38 days, Pope Francis returned to the Vatican in March. Just a day before his death, Pope Francis made a surprise appearance for Easter Sunday blessings at the Vatican St. Peter's Square. Then on Easter Sunday morning, Pope Francis also held a brief private meeting with Vice President J.D. Vance. The meeting lasted only a few minutes, and it served as an opportunity to exchange Easter greetings. Francis was the first Jesuit pope, the first pope from the Americas, the first from the Southern Hemisphere, and the first non-European pontiff since Pope Gregory III more than 1,000 years earlier. And now that Pope Francis has passed away, his funeral arrangements will commence and a multi-day funeral procession will take place at the Vatican. Then the College of Cardinals will convene for the conclave and elect the next pope. This could take around 4 weeks. His death triggers the start of the solemn process to elect a replacement, and it raises concerns about a long-standing legend. It is said that there is a super-secret archive in the Vatican Library in Rome. What's inside is not ordinary historical documents, but the private information of the popes. The most mysterious of these are 5 parchments of unknown origin. It is said to have predicted the future 112 popes 900 years ago, and it has been accurate from then until now. The last pope in the prophecy is the one who just passed away. The prophecy does not say who will be the successor, though. So why are there only 112 popes? It is said, at the end of the last one, the Roman Church will collapse, the second coming of Christ will come, and the great judgment will begin. Some people dismiss this prophecy as nonsense. What would the Church, which has lasted nearly 2,000 years, do without a pope? How can an empire of faith with 1/6 of the world's population just disappear? But supporters of the prophecy argue if the previous ones were accurate, why not the last one? It seems that we can only leave this question to time and see what answers it brings. Before the final answer is revealed, we can take a look at Francis's reforms. Francis has long been criticized by conservatives for steering the church toward left-wing political activity rather than upholding tradition and morality. For example, he openly supported the theory of evolution. He declared that the theories of evolution and the Big Bang were real and they were not incompatible with the existence of a creator. Critics say that this is confusing since evolution seems to deny God. His endorsement of evolution also led to his endorsement of same-sex marriage. He permitted priests to bless same-sex marriages. He also compromised with the atheist Chinese Communist government by accepting 7 bishops who were appointed by the CCP. So many people wonder, did Pope Francis really believe in God, or did he believe in Karl Marx? In short, his reforms were so avant-garde that he even plunged the church into unprecedented controversy. So what will happen next, given that the church is already plagued by scandals and internal controversies? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Conservative Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito wrote a strongly worded dissent over the weekend. The dissent was against a Saturday morning Supreme Court ruling that temporarily blocked the Trump administration from deporting members of the Venezuelan mafia under a wartime law. Justice Clarence Thomas also joined the dissent, which was posted on the Supreme Court's website on Sunday. Alito wrote, literally, in the middle of the night, the court issued an unprecedented and legally questionable relief without giving the lower courts a chance to rule, without hearing from the opposing party within 8 hours of receiving the application, with dubious factual support for its order, and without providing any explanation for its order. Alito did not join the court's order because he thought that there was no good reason to issue an order at midnight. Alito noted both the executive and the judiciary have an obligation to follow the law. The executive must proceed under the terms of our order in Trump versus JGG. And this court should follow established procedures. According to Alito, the justices acted even though the court did not appear to have the authority to hear the case. Alito also believes that the papers alleged that the applicants were in imminent danger of removal, but provided no evidence of that allegation. On April 19th, the Supreme Court issued an unsigned one-page order and temporarily blocked the Trump administration from deporting a group of Venezuelan men accused of being gang members. The order reads, the government is directed not to remove any member of the putative class of detainees from the United States until further order of this court. However, the order did not explain why the court had acted. The order came after the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, asked the Supreme Court to intervene on an emergency basis. The ACLU argued that dozens of Venezuelan nationals could be quickly removed from the country without the judicial review that the justices had previously ordered. But in its response, the Trump administration urged the justices to reject the ACLU's request after reviewing it further. The administration said, at a minimum, if the court keeps its administrative stay in place, the government respectfully requests that the court clarify that it is administratively staying removals only under the Alien Enemies Act, and that its order does not preclude removal pursuant to any other immigration authorities. Putative class members may be independently subject to removal under Title VIII, including as members of a foreign terrorist organization or otherwise. Before I move on, I want to thank all of our viewers for your support. Your support has really helped us to get to where we are today. We know our content deserves to be spread all around the world, so in order to make a breakthrough, we recently asked you to leave a comment below the video. Many of you left American flag emojis or left us very encouraging messages, so I want to thank all of you for doing that. They are very heartwarming. This is helping us to boost the engagement rate, and we have seen the positive results already. So I'd like to kindly ask you to please leave us a comment again today and keep doing so as often as you can. With your continued support, we're confident that we will be with all of you freedom-loving people long into the future because everybody deserves to know the truth. Okay, let's get back into it. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba expressed his view on the ongoing U.S.-Japan trade talks on Sunday. He emphasized that he hopes that the tariff negotiations between the two countries would serve as a model for U.S. negotiations with other countries. On an NHK talk show, he said that Japan could buy more U.S. energy, and he suggested flexibility on U.S. allegations of non-tariff barriers to the Japanese auto market. Ishiba said, "We'll have to deal with this issue from the standpoint of fairness." He believes that both sides in the negotiations need a satisfactory outcome. Since Japan was one of the first countries to negotiate with the U.S., the world is watching to see what kind of agreement is eventually reached. Ishiba said that an outcome in which one side benefits while the other suffers would not serve as a model for other countries. President Trump explained in a phone conversation with the Japanese Prime Minister that there were few American cars on the roads in Japan. The Japanese Prime Minister surmised that this problem was deeply upsetting to the U.S. side. Last week, during a meeting with Japan's Minister of Economic and Fiscal Policy, Raisai Akazawa, at the White House, President Trump emphasized the need to eliminate the trade deficit between the United States and Japan, and President Trump also pointed out that the American automobiles have a low market share in Japan. This is partly due to the differences in traffic and safety rules between the U.S. and Japan. Japan currently follows the 1958 United Nations Agreement on Motor Vehicle Standards. Japan has detailed safety testing requirements for imported vehicles. The United States, on the other hand, adopts a self-regulatory model whereby vehicle manufacturers complete their own safety tests. The inconsistency in standards between the two countries has resulted in a cumbersome additional approval process for U.S.-made vehicles that are imported to Japan, which often takes months. This difference in systems has been officially categorized by the U.S. as one of the non-tariff barriers. The U.S. is particularly concerned about Japan's technical requirements for frontal and side impact crash tests, which Japan believes raise import thresholds, and it discourages U.S. vehicle manufacturers from expanding their market in Japan. The dispute over automobile approval was originally resolved during the previous Trans-Pacific Partnership negotiations. At the time, Japan had promised to ease the fire-resistant test requirements for some U.S. vehicles and to exempt the low volume of vehicles from practical vehicle testing. However, President Trump withdrew from the Trans-Pacific Partnership in 2017. So the related concessions have not been finalized, and both sides need to resume the negotiation process. Shigeru Ishiba said on Sunday that the Japanese government will seriously examine Japan's safety standards to ensure that Japan's safety rules are not perceived as unfair by the other side. Nikkei Asia reported that Japan is considering relaxing safety rules for imported cars as part of tariff talks with the United States. Ishiba also said that cutting the U.S. trade deficit with other countries is President Trump's top priority. Japan may also buy more U.S. energy. Ishiba and President Trump will decide on the final solution after in-depth discussions. Ishiba said he would visit the United States at an appropriate time and he would make every effort to get the best possible result. Also on Sunday, South Korea's trade ministry announced that South Korea and the United States are slated to discuss trade this week in Washington at the Trump administration's request. The statement said that Korea's trade minister is scheduled to leave Seoul on Wednesday, but it did not specify the meeting agenda or other additional details. South Korea derives most of its earnings from exports, especially from the U.S. market. Its most important exports are integrated circuits, automobiles and parts, refined petroleum, and passenger ships. Therefore, the U.S. tariff policy has a significant impact on South Korea's economy. The Korean government also understands the purpose of President Trump's tariff war and has taken action to pave the way for this negotiation. The Korea Customs Service announced on Monday that it has recently uncovered several cases of Chinese companies exporting goods falsely labeled as made in Korea to the U.S., totaling more than $20 million US. 97% of the goods in the cases were exported to the United States. This compares with 67% last year. This is a sharp increase in the number of Chinese manufacturers that have been detoured through Korea after the release of President Trump's new tariff policy. One of the cases seized was battery cathode materials that were valued at 3.3 billion won, or about $2 million US. They were imported from China and labeled as Korean origin, and then they were exported to the United States. In another case in March, a total of 19.3 billion won, or $12 million US, in surveillance camera parts were imported from China, assembled in South Korea, and then exported in order to avoid U.S. restrictions on China's communication equipment. On Monday, South Korea and U.S. customs officials also held a meeting to discuss measures to strengthen joint seizures. China's economy is also dependent on exports, but it's clear that Washington intends to put negotiations with Beijing on the back burner. So last week we saw some sort of Chinese luxury conspiracy videos start to circulate on TikTok and then in other corners of the internet as well. If you don't already know what we're talking about, these videos feature a fairly standard format. In the video, a person claiming to be a Chinese manufacturer or factory owner will tell the viewers that they are going to reveal a big secret. So what's the secret? European luxury manufacturers have been using China's factories to produce designer goods, then charging an enormous markup that is passed on to the consumer. The social media user claims in the video, they take almost finished bags from China factories and just do the repackaging and logo installation, something like that. The batch of these films was reportedly pooled online between April 10th and April 15th. The brands involved include Hermes, Louis Vuitton, Chanel, and other major European luxury brands. The videos are made in China, and they are mostly presented with English subtitles or dubbed in English, and they are clearly geared toward audiences outside of China. Here's an example.
This Birkin bag at Hermes boutique will cost you 38,000 USD. But what is the real cost out of the factory? Today, I'm going to break it down in front of you, step by step. First thing first, Hermes only use the leathers from the 3 top-level suppliers. One is called Goulet from Italy.
The videos conclude with a call for consumers to bypass U.S.-China tariffs and to buy substitution goods directly from Chinese factories. The videos received up to 2 billion views in a short period of time, but the media noted that a high degree of consistency in the timing of the uploads and in the arrangement and formatting of the content suggests a central operation. Most of the brands involved in these videos have issued statements refuting the claims made in the videos. Hermes quickly clarified that all of its leather products are 100% made in France. Louis Vuitton's official website also clearly stated that the brand's leather products are produced in Europe and the United States. In an analysis, Newsweek noted that the content of the Chinese videos was highly unreliable. According to the relevant EU regulations, only goods that have undergone substantial transformation in Europe can be legally labeled as made in Europe, and labeling or repackaging does not meet this specification. Sandrine Zerbib, a professor at the French Business School and an expert on the Chinese market, says that China is now the world's leading source of imitations. About 75% of the counterfeit goods circulating in Europe, Japan, and the United States come from China. She said that the films specifically target Gen Z millennials and active TikTok users, most of whom are aware that they're buying knockoffs but don't care. But the media also pointed out that while many people don't care that they're buying knockoffs, and while avoiding price increases may sound appealing, it's often not desirable or possible to buy directly from Chinese factories. First of all, buying direct from the manufacturer often requires large wholesale quantities. That's why individual consumers often look to Chinese apps to buy cheap knockoff brand products. Then there are other potential barriers, including communicating with customer service and avoiding scams. Furthermore, even if you can figure out how to buy straight from the source, it's unlikely to save you from the tariffs. President Trump recently tightened U.S. custom clearance procedures. He mandated the permanent termination of the de minimis exemption for small packages from China and Hong Kong that are valued at less than $800 effective May 2nd. The policy was designed to close a U.S. custom loophole that was previously exploited by Chinese e-commerce firms, including Shein and Temu. DHL Express announced that it will suspend deliveries of more than $800 in response to cost increases and the new U.S. custom regulations. DHL said in a statement, "This change has caused a surge in formal custom clearances, which we are handling around the clock." DHL stated on its website that the new U.S. custom regulations require any U.S.-bound shipments with a declared value of more than $800 to go through formal entry procedures as of April 5th this year. Previously, the threshold was $2,500. This change has led to a surge in official clearances. According to the DHL notice, business-to-consumer shipments with a custom declared value of less than $800 will not be affected by the new policy and can continue to be shipped. In addition, DHL will continue to provide transportation services for business-to-business shipments to U.S. companies, regardless of whether the declared value exceeds $800, but there may be delays. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember that every like, comment, and share helps more people to see the truth. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And if you have already subscribed, we thank you, but please double check to make sure that you're still subscribed, because some of our audience have reported that they're somehow unsubscribed without their knowledge. We've also heard that many of you don't get notifications of our videos anymore on YouTube. So when you do subscribe on YouTube, please make sure to tap the notification bell as well. Okay, this is our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard today, please don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth.